Okay, the first part of this lecture is going to be identifying and naming polynomials. Now, what is a polynomial? So what we've done so far is we've been dealing with quadratics. That's where the equation that we have will have a squared term. Now we're going to have equations that have cubic terms, fourth power terms, stuff like that. That's called a polynomial. Now we're going to have equations that could have fourth powers that aren't polynomials. So there's a specific set of criteria which has to happen so that we would say this is a polynomial equation versus something that's an exponential versus a logarithm versus a rational polynomial. Those are all different types of equations we're going to cover this year. So a couple things to talk about first is when I talk about a polynomial equation, the degree of the polynomial is whatever the largest exponent is. So if for some reason these would all be added, the degree of the polynomial, if I look at that, the largest exponent is 4, so this would be a degree 4 polynomial. It's whatever the largest exponent is. The leading coefficient is whatever the coefficient is in front of the term that has the largest exponent. So if this x to the fourth was actually something like a negative 7x to the fourth minus 3x cubed, this is the largest exponent right here, so that is the degree 4. The leading coefficient would be the minus 7. It's whatever the coefficient is on the term with the biggest exponent. Okay? The next one is this term right here. It's the term that doesn't have any x on it, like a 5. There's no x or anything. That would be the term that's written out here, a0. That's called the constant term. Okay, now to be called a polynomial, there has to be some requirements for the coefficients. Those are the things that are in front of the x's. And there has to be some requirements for the actual exponents. So here they are. The coefficients, those are the numbers in front of the x's. Those cannot be imaginary. They could be irrational, which means they could have square roots. They could be pi. They could be negative numbers. They could be fractions. But the coefficients cannot be imaginary. Okay, now let's move to the exponents. The exponents can't be negative. They can't be fractions. They have to be the real numbers that are integers like 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. No fractions, no negatives, no imaginary numbers, no square roots, just nice whole numbers. That's what the exponents have to be. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple examples and see if these are. I'll come back up to this, to what we're talking about. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is we're just going to see if these are polynomials. Then we'll come back and name them in a second. Okay, so the first one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the leading coefficients. I have a negative 2, I have a 5, and an 8. There are no imaginary numbers for the coefficients, so it passes the coefficient test. So A, are the coefficients good? Yep. Now let's look at the exponents. I have a 3, that would be a 1. Are there any negative numbers or fractions? They're all just natural 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So that would be okay. So the exponent, those pass. So A would be a polynomial. Let's look at B. Okay, so for B, let's look at the coefficients. I've got a negative 0.8. That's not an imaginary number. I have a square root of 2. That's not imaginary, and 12. So my coefficients are all good. Let's look at the exponents. Now remember, they have to be like 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's a 3. That's a 4. They're all good. So the exponents check. This is a polynomial. Let's go to C. Okay, so let's look at the coefficients. I have a negative 1. That's good. I have a 7. That's okay. And I have a 4. So the coefficients pass. Let's look at the exponents. The first one has a square. That's good. Oh, the second one has a negative 1. No negatives. So no, this is not a polynomial. Okay, D. Let's check the coefficients. I have a 1 there, and I have a 3, so those are good. The coefficients, they are not imaginary. And for the exponents, let's see what we have. We have a 2. Oh, the x is an exponent. That's not allowed. You can't have the exponent be a variable either. Then that would be an exponential equation. It is an equation, but it's not what's called a polynomial, so this is not a polynomial. Okay, so that's what you're going to check to see if it's a polynomial. Okay, let's talk about a couple other things if they're polynomials. One is called standard form. So if it is a polynomial, your homework is going to say put it in standard form. That means you just order it so that the exponents go from the highest to the lowest. So for example, in this one, if I scan it, first, is it a polynomial? 4, -3, yeah, it's a polynomial. Let's look at the exponents. Yes, it is a polynomial. So now let's put it in standard form. That's my biggest exponent right here, the 3. So this whole term needs to go in the front. So minus 3x cubed. Then I have a 4x squared. That'd be a plus in front of that. So plus 4x squared. So notice now I just have them in order of decreasing exponents. That's called standard form. The other thing we have to know is just what do they call these things. They all have specific names. We know that if the power on the x is 1, that's just a straight line. It's called a linear. We know if the highest degree is a 2, it's called a quadratic. If the highest degree is a 3, it's called a cubic. And if it's a 4th power, it's called a quartic, Q-U-A-R-T-I-C. So if it says state the type, that's what that means. This is the type, means give it the name that it's supposed to have. So let's go ahead and go to the things that we just did. And it's going to say, if it is a polynomial, put it in standard form and state the type. So let's do that. So some of these are not polynomials. Okay, so let's look at the first one. This one was a polynomial. So I could write it in standard form. So that was A. So I need to have the exponents go down in decreasing order. So that would be a -2x cubed. The next highest exponent is that first power. And then plus 8. So that's in standard form. Since the exponent's 3, I would say the type is a cubic. Okay, let's move to B. B is the highest exponent is a 4. So that goes first. So standard form would be the square root of 2x to the 4th, because that's the highest degree, followed by the cubic minus 0.8x cubed. There is no squared term, so I've got minus 12. That's standard form. Oh, the one thing I forgot is the leading coefficient on this one. That's the coefficient in front of the term with the largest degree. So the leading coefficient's a -2. Over here, this is a 4th power, so the type is a quartic. And the leading coefficient is the square root of 2. It's the coefficient that's on the term with the highest degree. These I don't have to do because they're not polynomials. If it's not a polynomial, I don't have to put them in order, so I can forget about doing that for those.